In this video, I'll uncover a groundbreaking fasting study that will forever change the way that we look at intermittent fasting. Now, if you follow this channel, there's a good chance that you've probably heard of intermittent fasting. Now, intermittent fasting has helped millions of people drastically improve their health. And when I say improve their health, I mean overcome severe health challenges, reverse health conditions, you name it. Now, one of the challenges that comes with intermittent fasting and natural health in general is that many times there's not enough studies to really back it up to make it mainstream and really prove that it is going to work and be efficient for the masses. But that's all changed today, because in this video, we're going to talk about a groundbreaking new study, a review of studies that's going to talk about not only how intermittent fasting is so beneficial, but also how you can utilize it in order to drastically improve your health. So stick around to the end of this video. But before we get started, I'm Dr. Zyrowski, and welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, it's a pleasure to have you here. Be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification, and join our notification community. That way it can help you excel your health and your life. Let's go ahead and take a look at this study and see what we're talking about here. So it's a study done by the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, the New England Journal of Medicine is a very reputable source when it comes to different health studies. This is why this is very important, because a lot of people are watching this going, well, Dr. Zyrowski, you've talked about how this works for you clinically. You talked about how it's changed your life. And many of you have your own stories of how efficient intermittent fasting is as a strategy to drastically improve your health. And you've seen all the different case reports out there on the internet. But the problem with this, and the problem with any natural health topic in general, is that if there's not studies behind it, it's just wrote off as quackery. Now, the thing is too, when we look at natural health, is that in many cases we run into this because there is not sufficient studies. The reason that in the realm of natural health that there's not a ton of studies is because it takes funding, right? Now, let's say, for instance, if you're looking at medication, right? There's a good reason to have a lot of money poured into research for medication because you're going to make a ton of money on the back end. But how are you going to make any money off intermittent fasting? The truth is that you're not. And the same thing happens when it comes to vitamins and a lot of natural healing topics, is that there's not sufficient research because there's not sufficient funding. This takes a lot of money to do. It is not easy to do. And so when we look at natural health, it's very important that we have different research publications like this, medical publications that are going and taking topics, natural health topics like intermittent fasting, and putting them at the forefront so that these natural health topics can go mainstream. They can be used by government bodies. They can be used in health institutions, hospitals, and that way the general public can drastically benefit from it. And that's why this is so important. It's not that it proved that intermittent fasting actually works, as if you didn't already know that, but it proves to government bodies and some of the mainstream health institutions that it is something that can actually be utilized as a tool in order to improve the general public's health. Let's go ahead and talk about the types of fasting this study, this review of studies was talking about. First of all, they talked about three types. It was alternate day fasting. Alternate day fasting is basically where you eat normal calories one day and then you cut your calorie intake down to about 25% of normal calorie intake on the next. Okay, so you're going to think about between 500 and 600 calories. So it's normal calorie intake, 25% of normal calorie intake. Normal, cutting it down, normal, cutting it down, and then that pattern just goes on. And that's alternate day fasting. 5-2 intermittent fasting is referred to as a type of intermittent fasting where you're basically going to eat a normal calorie intake 5 days a week, and then you're going to do calorie restriction 2 days a week. You typically split them up where you're eating normal calorie intake every day of the week except maybe like Tuesday, Thursday. So that's 5-2 intermittent fasting. And then there's time restricted fasting, time-restricted feeding, and that's your typical intermittent fasting that most people are familiar with, 16 and 8, 1 meal a day, that sort of thing. And so those are the types of intermittent fasting that this study really referenced as the most research-based types of fasting. Let's go ahead and take a look at this here. Now, a natural approach to healthcare is so important, right? The body only heals naturally. It's so important to make sure that we're always having natural healing practices at the forefront of anything that we do if we want to actually live a long life. And so intermittent fasting is one of those strategies that really helps employ all the different mechanisms within the body in order to help promote longevity and reverse health conditions. Now, the other thing that we looked at in this study is how do animals eat, okay? And this is something that's really interesting because when we look at animals in general, if they're sick, if they're down, if they're injured, what do? They don't eat. And they're really going and utilizing intermittent fasting as a strategy to get better. Now, animals are very biologically close to human beings. And so this is why when we look at the animal studies and how intermittent fasting impacts them, it's very important to understand those to see how they'll impact the human being. Now, animals also, in many cases, will fast during certain periods of time and also eat during certain periods of time. Unfortunately, for humans, we don't do that. We tend to just eat a lot. We tend to eat all the time, and we tend to overeat, which is even worse, okay? So the next thing that we're looking at in this study is ancestral health, okay? Ancestral health is very important to recognize. I talk about this all the time, this primal health. You know, how in the world did our ancestors eat? Well, first of all, you know, they had to hunt and gather, and if they didn't have food from hunting and they didn't have food from gathering, maybe it was a seasonal thing, whatever it was, but if they didn't have food, they didn't get to eat. So there was always situations where they were having a adaptive stress response in their body because they didn't have food availability. Today, we have grocery stores. We can pretty much graze all day long. We can eat 4 meals a day. We can snack in between, and we can make sure that we're just filling our bellies right before bed. And this is something that a lot of people are doing, but our ancestors didn't have that option. It wasn't even an option to consider doing that. So we have to consider that ancestral health when we think about how we should eat today. And then, of course, there's Okinawa. Now, Okinawa is an island off the coast of Japan. It's been highly studied by researchers because the individuals here are so healthy. And now when I talk about Okinawa, I'm talking about the traditional eating patterns of the Okinawa people. A lot of modern eating practices has made its way into Okinawa, and now a lot of the individuals there aren't nearly as healthy as they used to be. But when they look at traditional Okinawans, essentially what they found is that these people here are very, very healthy, and one of the things that they employ is intermittent fasting in order to actually help boost their health. Now, they don't know all the science behind it. They don't have the research that we have there. But the thing is that they do have is they have tradition, and they traditionally go and just automatically do intermittent fasting, and they find that these people have excellent health. So that's something to consider too, and that was also brought up in this study. Now let's go ahead and talk about the mechanisms at work when we talk about intermittent fasting. Now, this review of studies basically pointed out how these mechanisms are really what is giving us the massive benefit that intermittent fasting offers. This is very important. A lot of people wonder, well, why does intermittent fasting have so many benefits? Well, here's why. First of all, there's that metabolic switch. When you're intermittent fasting, you're going through that metabolic switch when you're switching from a sugar-burning person to a fat-burning person, okay? So you're burning sugar for energy here, but when you're intermittent fasting, after you're in that fasted state for a long period of time, you go and you start burning that fat for energy. And so then you fire up those ketone bodies, and those ketone bodies have excellent benefit to the entire body. But one of the things that they found in their research is that it is a potent signaling molecule. It's a potent signaling molecule for anti-aging, for positive epigenetic changes, for making sure that the metabolism starts doing what it's supposed to do. It starts functioning as it's supposed to. It's a very, very potent signaling molecule. So not only is there the ketone itself, which is highly beneficial to the brain, but it's actually the signaling molecule that kind of sets everything into action in order to help improve your health and reset your entire body. Now, the next thing here is going to help restore homeostasis, back to resetting your entire body. Now, one of the things that happens with a lot of people is they get into really bad eating patterns. They get into just bad patterns in general, bad sleeping patterns, bad eating patterns. When you get into these bad health patterns, you start to, skyrocket insulin, blood sugars going through the roof, and all these different metabolic hormones are just messed up. And unfortunately, your organ systems start to function in a way that's not healthy either. And so what they found is that intermittent fasting is a really great way to just restore the body to its homeostatic position that it needs to be in order to express health. Next here, is it weight loss or fasting? This is something that's really interesting because a lot of people say, well, intermittent fasting works so well because the weight loss involved. You lose the weight because that weight is such a big problem when it comes to your overall health. It's, firing up the metabolic hormones, putting them in the wrong direction. Well, if you lose that weight, all of a sudden you're healthy. But what they found in this study is that the weight loss and the fasting were really disassociated from each other. Okay, yeah, you do get weight loss with fasting, but it's not the weight loss that is causing all these mechanisms to actually offer you these massive benefits. It's the fasting itself. Next here is antioxidant defense. So basically, intermittent fasting is going to fire up your antioxidant defense system, which is very important for avoiding a lot of diseases and oxidative stress on the body. Intermittent fasting offers DNA repair, which is very important as we live very bad lifestyles and we get these epigenetic changes, these very degenerative changes that start to occur to the DNA. Essentially, it really breaks us down. It allows us to express disease like cancer. But intermittent fasting is going to offer DNA repair. It's going to decrease inflammation, which is incredibly important. Many people are just inflammatory nightmares when it comes to their health. I mean, the thing is, even for me, is I noticed that intermittent fasting has drastically helped me improve my health. It makes me feel so much better. I literally actually just came off of a 3-day water fast, and I always am amazed at how much better I feel after I do this. But one of the things, as I've been on this health journey for a long period of time, I know that genetically I am highly, highly susceptible to inflammatory problems. So, if I'm not fasting on a regular basis, I just do not feel well. And I know that it's an inflammatory problem in my body. So it helps decrease inflammation, fires up autophagy. This is where it's getting rid of the broken down, damaged cells and replacing them with new healthy cells, which is incredibly powerful and important. And it's also going to focus and help us with mitochondrial biogenesis. This is basically our energy system in our body. Okay, so your mitochondria produce the energy for our body, for our cells to function properly. Intermittent fasting helps create new mitochondria, which is going to really help them function well, help give you proper energy, and help your body have the energy to operate correctly. Now let's look at how intermittent fasting helps with disease prevention and longevity. This is a very powerful statement made by this research review that shows us that intermittent fasting, in fact, does help not only avoid these problems, but reverse these different conditions that many people face. Let's first talk about obesity and diabetes, mellitus, type 2 diabetes, okay? First of all, obesity is very important that we help rewind this obesity epidemic that we're facing, because when obesity is something that you're facing, then essentially your risk factors for like every disease just goes through the roof. So when you're intermittent fasting, you're burning those ketones for energy, you're turning your body into a fat burner, you're burning fat for energy, therefore you're gonna help reverse that obesity problem that you're facing. And when we look at diabetes, this is majorly important because this is also an epidemic that so many people are facing. Now, diabetes is when you're going to have insulin resistance, so intermittent fasting is going to help you increase insulin sensitivity. It's also going to help drive down those glucose levels. It's going to help your body heal. It's also going to help reverse some of that inflammatory problem that you're facing as well with this issue. It's going to also support cardiovascular disease, reversing this. It's going to help balance out your cholesterol. It's going to help balance out your triglyceride levels. It's going to help lower your blood pressure. The intermittent fasting has been proven time and time again to help with cardiovascular disease, and it is a very powerful strategy to go and have in your toolbox in order to help prevent this #1 issue that is killing so many people. We want to make sure that we are reducing our risk factor of cardiovascular disease because many people statistically are facing this problem. Cancer is another big one. It's going to help, improve immune system function. It's going to help get rid of those broken down, damaged cells. It's going to help decrease inflammation. It's going to really, you're going to be able to utilize that autophagy mechanism, and it's going to help reduce cancer rates majorly. Imagine if everybody was doing intermittent fasting, cancer and all these different diseases we're talking about right here would just drop off. It'd be crazy. Next here is neurodegenerative disorders, okay? Whether it's MS, whether it's people who have psychological disorders, whether it's people who have Parkinson's, I mean, you name it. Neurological conditions are a major, major problem in today's society. So intermittent fasting can help with that. Asthma, I talked about recently how when you're doing intermittent fasting, it helps reset the immune system. In fact, doing a multiple day fast can actually completely reset the immune system so that you can function so much better. Now, when we look at all the people who have all these allergies, asthma, and these issues that are skyrocketing today but really weren't that big of a deal 30 years ago, we can utilize intermittent fasting to help with them. arthritis, a massive inflammatory condition that many people are facing today. I've helped so many people reverse arthritis, and intermittent fasting is really going to help with that. We saw before in the research how it's going to help reduce inflammation. This is a massive inflammatory problem, a chronic inflammatory problem that just is uncontrolled. Next is surgical recovery. I thought this was really good too because, like I said, a lot of times when animals in the wild, they get hurt, what do? They don't eat. They're utilizing fasting in these ketone bodies in order to actually help heal their body. And so surgical recovery. Imagine if hospitals were utilizing intermittent fasting in order to help people heal and recover. Most people go to the hospital and guess what they always say? The food is junk there, just total trash food. So we want to make sure that we utilize intermittent fasting as a way to recover from surgery or a traumatic injury. If you have a traumatic injury, using fasting is very powerful so that you can recover from it. So share in the comment section below your intermittent fasting story. Give this video a thumbs up and share this with your friends. They're gonna love it. And then check out this video over here, how you can utilize the ketogenic diet to improve your health. Now, first of all, your body can use two sources of energy. It's going to be able to use fat for energy, or it's going to be able to use sugar for energy.